Here's someone who asks a question about prayer for groups. Is it appropriate to pray for salvation, for the salvation of whole groups of people, atheists and others, when you know God is not going to save everyone? Well, I think the answer to that is yes, because we have biblical example of it. Paul writes in Romans chapter 10, "Brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them," this would be his Jewish brethren, "is that they may be saved." It is for their salvation. So Paul prayed for the salvation of the nation of Israel. I take that to mean not just that Israel as a whole would turn, but rather for the individuals to turn. And therefore, I mean, because the nation turning is only the nation turning if the individuals themselves are believing. And there is a sense that Paul says later that, on my take at least, that all Israel will make that move and therefore be saved characteristically. That is, the Jewish people will characteristically be putting their faith in their Messiah. But Paul is praying to that end, which entails individual salvation, even though he knows that not everyone will do that. So I think the simple biblical answer to the question is yes, it's certainly legitimate to do that, to pray that the people of a country would turn. What is it that you're praying when you pray for revival in a group? Revival in our nation. Aren't you praying for the salvation of people in this country? It's not a revival if people aren't coming to Christ. So I think it's fully legitimate to pray for groups. And even though we know that not everyone in that group will come to know Christ, I just don't see any conflict. This is also an example of Paul praying for one's salvation, too. I mean, sometimes people have, I think, balked at, wait a minute, is it okay for me to pray for their salvation? Because doesn't that involve a violation of their freedom? And my response is yes. Scriptures do indicate that it's appropriate to pray for individual salvation. Here's an example of that. And whether or not it entails a violation of freedom is an entirely different question. I don't think it does in a meaningful sense. But whenever we are praying for somebody's salvation, we are asking God to do something that the person wouldn't do on their own. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any need for prayer. The person's going to do it on their own, then why ask God to intervene? That's over-determines the result, so to speak. It's going to happen on its own. No extra intervention is necessary. But we pray specifically because we want God to do something in that individual or this group of individuals that ensures that they come to know Him. So there's a sense in which every prayer for salvation of anyone is a request for God to intervene against their fallen will, as it were. And frankly, if that weren't going to happen, then there's no way the person could come to know Christ, because their fallen will prevail unless God intervenes.